Now, when I mention the words cybersecurity and asset management, I think most people listening will know all about the critical role that it plays and how many of us are possibly guilty of taking it for granted. But also how it is an incredibly cliched industry. For example, a Google search about cybersecurity will reveal matrix code and maybe even a hacker wearing hoodie, along with stock phrases that every company seems to use in cybersecurity. So if you are a startup founder, in particular a cybersecurity founder, and you want to stand out in an industry and want to be known as the most innovative startup at the RSA conference, where would you begin? Please trust me when I say that today's episode is crucial for a cybersecurity founder, and indeed anybody interested in the industry. But today's episode is also washed down with some fantastic stories behind it, and stories that I'll personally remember for a long time after today's episode is released. And the company is Axonius, and they're aiming to solve the least sexy problem in cybersecurity, which is asset management. And by connecting to more than 100 security and management solutions, Axonius is able to give customers credible and a comprehensive asset inventory and uncover security coverage gaps. And ultimately, automatically validate and enforce security policies. Now, they were named the 2019 RSAC Innovation Sandbox Most Innovative Startup and SC Magazine's Rookie Security Company of the Year. But all those awards only tell half the story, so buckle up and hold on tight so I can beam your ears all the way to Cape Cod so we can speak with Nathan Burke from Axonius, who's going to share his story in a conversation that I genuinely enjoyed, and I hope you do too. So, a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Sure. My name is Nathan Burke, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Axonius, and we're a cybersecurity startup doing what we call cybersecurity asset management. This is my third cybersecurity startup, my fifth startup overall. I really enjoy joining at the very early stage where I can kind of define the brand and the message and then bring it to market. Two of the three cybersecurity startups I've been at have been acquired. And aside from my day job, I really like advising other early stage startups. I generally do two at a time. I don't want to do more than that. I find that helping other startups that have nothing to do with cybersecurity really makes me step back and be more creative. And then aside from the work stuff, I live on Cape Cod with my wife and 4-year-old daughter, with a 13-year-old corgi named Steve, and quite possibly the smartest German Shepherd on the planet named Heidi, and she's 1.5 years.
Fantastic. Now, on this Daily Tech podcast, I love exploring the stories behind startups and behind their success. But I read that yours is the most boring startup around. But industry peers don't see it that way. So can you just set the scene and tell me about the kind of problems that you solve for your customers and what makes you unique from other solutions out there?
Sure. So I don't know if it's boring, but we are definitely in what we call the most unsexy part of cybersecurity. And let me tell you why. So like when you think of cybersecurity, and just as an experiment on your own, if you want to, just search Google images for the word cybersecurity. And so you're going to see like all these images that are reminiscent of the Matrix, right? Like sci-fi, high tech. And when you think about it, like cybersecurity has all these like cutting edge technologies, all the way from AI to machine learning and deception and automation. And so it's filled with super cool tech. And then there's asset management, right? So no AI, no machine learning. We're talking about answering the most fundamental questions like, how many devices do I have? Who has access to them? What's running on them? Where are they? Are they protected by the security solutions we've already bought? And these are really basic questions, but they're hard to answer. And so when you think about that, it's 2019. Why are these questions hard to answer? If you look at it kind of in context, the evolution is, to me, kind of fascinating because, think back 20 years ago, you probably just had Windows desktops on a physical network, maybe running an antivirus on each, and asset management was easy. And then a few big changes happened that made it really difficult, right? So then think about mobile devices. If you went back to that time and said, my employees are going to be checking email while in line at Starbucks. They would call you crazy, but that's just the way things are, right? And then you got things like the cloud. So everyone's moving more and more to the cloud, but do the solutions they have cover those cloud instances? And BYOD, right? So the IT and security teams just lost control over the devices that now access their systems and data. And then, now you look at IoT and everyone's refrigerator's talking to the internet, but just everything is, right? So we're in a world where everything is connected to everything else. It's just hard to answer that really kind of basic question of like, what do I have? What am I responsible for securing? And are those things secure? So really that's like kind of the evolution of the problem. And it's one of those things where the problem has only gotten worse. And when I think our industry is really very innovative, but it's innovative on things that aren't going back to those basic questions. And that's how the problem has gotten worse. And that's why kind of we decided to focus on that problem.
And you guys are deservedly known as one of the hottest in cybersecurity, having been named the most innovative startup at the recent RSA conference and SC Magazine's Rookie Security Company of the Year. But can you tell me about where it all began and the inspiration behind what you started here?
Sure. So, the genesis behind Axonius was when our CEO and co-founder, Dean Sisman, was at his last startup. He was working with one of the largest retailers on the planet, and he was trying to figure out how to deploy their product and asked the security team there, what do you have that can allow me to deploy this product? And they had like hundreds of solutions. And he said, well, wait a second, do you know how many devices you have? And they're like, no, nobody does. And so he figured out that they had these hundreds of solutions, but no way to know what was actually running, where there were gaps, and how a security team can answer these really basic questions. So he just realized how big of a problem this was, and then kind of looking to the future, saw how it's only getting worse with just kind of this explosion in the number and the types of devices. And so he then decided to start Axonius to really help security teams stop wasting time figuring out all these answers to really basic questions so they can focus on things like the deception and machine learning and all of those kind of high-tech things that we want our security teams that are already resource constrained and like overworked. We want them working on things that are really valuable and not wasting time saying, how many desktops do I have that are vulnerable to, the next virus that comes out. So that's why he started the company. And it was kind of a rocket ship from there. It was just July of 2017. They started the company, immediately got seed funding after that. And I joined in November of 2017. We had our first product in March of 2018. And now, we're kind of taking off.
And I'm glad you mentioned the seed funding there, because I think you went on to close a 13 million seed round for what a lot of people called the Toyota Camry of cybersecurity. So it's clear you guys have got a sense of humour in cybersecurity as well. But can you tell me more about the cybersecurity asset management and how it fixes that problem that actually nobody's paying attention to right now? Yeah,
so we closed our A round. It was a $13 million A round in February of this year, so it was right before the RSA conference. And just talking about the Toyota Camry thing for a second, and then I'll get to the other part, which is, cybersecurity is just so saturated with companies that, really say they all solve the same problems. So you have to find a way to stand out. I believe there were at RSA, I think there were 626 vendors there. And that's, only the people that were exhibiting at one show. And it's some multiple of that of how many companies there are out there. I did the math. I wish I had it on hand, but it was something like, if you decided that you wanted to visit every single vendor at the RSA conference and spend 2 minutes at each, forgetting about how long it takes to walk from one to the other, and any of that sort of thing, it would be physically impossible to do so because there aren't enough hours in the show to be able to do that. That's just how many there are at one show, right? And so you've got to find a way to stand out. And we kind of came up with this idea, whereas the hot technologies like AI and machine learning get all the hype and attention, kind of like a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, right? Asset management is like much more fundamental and basic, kind of like a Toyota Camry. And the Ferraris might be sexier, but the Camry is the most sold car in the US because it really fits the most fundamental of requirements of what you need it to do. And so to us, that's asset management. Before you could even take advantage of the sexier technologies, you have to solve the basics first. And that seems to really resonate with people.